is you remember that Richie Incognito stuff that came out, I think it was 2013, so over a decade ago, of the bullying, and they referred to it as Bullygate, and it was a huge kind of scandal. Richie Incognito ended up sitting out a season. He was suspended by the NFL, faced fines, all this stuff, a lot of criticism. ESPN last week released an article with Jonathan Martin, who was the victim of this kind of bullygating, and it was very revealing, and things have kind of resurfaced now. And apparently Jonathan Martin did not feel at all that he was bullied. We're going to dive into this a little bit, but just give me your thoughts, your initial thoughts on this, Scott.
Yeah, I remember this entire scandal because it was like right at the very end of my playing career. So 2013, my senior year, just it shook definitely the entire football world, call it the sports world, but definitely the football world to its core, because it was just like, it was almost one of those things, you know how with the Navy SEALs and everything, there's a code in which you, after your service or even during your service, you don't go out and talk about your service in any manner, because it's the brotherhood, it's the frogman, you keep it in house, and like you do your duty and you do your mission and you succeed on all fronts while doing that. And this kind of was a very low level equivalent to that, or so it felt. I that's the vibe I got, at least in our locker room. It was like, whoa, man, this guy just aired some massively dirty laundry that was arguably it was arguably dirty, right? Like, because I don't remember the specifics, but it was one of those like gray area sort of situations as far as I can remember. But that was around the time that things were starting to percolate in terms of what we've experienced over the past decade, in like social issues and all that kind of stuff. And this felt like this was one of those first bubbles of the boiling water that popped. And it was just weird that it was in the football world, because football was such a, call it an enclosed group of brotherhood, that nothing ever really like leaked, except for, maybe the Ray Rices and like the wildly egregious things like that. This was something vastly different, that I think hit every locker room.
Yeah, dude. I mean, this was a really, really big deal. And like some people kind of argue that this almost changed the culture of football. I think I have a football locker room. So I think I have a post up here, right here. Yeah, let me throw this up of kind of what the results of this were. And so this is a tweet that we got right here. This is the Jonathan Martin Bullygate scandal changed the way not only the Jonathan Martin Bullygate changed not only the NFL, it changed football on all levels. Football all the way to the pros, completely changed the approach of every single squad on every single level. People who coached or played during the transition can attest to what I'm saying. And so I think this kind of speaks a little bit to what you were saying right there, dude. It's like, this is kind of like the first couple of things bubbling up. But I think it's important to kind of understand the landscape of what exactly went down. So Richie Incognito, he had a reputation for being a little bit rambunctious, he got in trouble in college for assault.
One way of putting it.
Yeah. That's a nice way of putting it. This dude was not super squeaky clean. And then he had this relationship with Jonathan Martin. They were both offensive linemen on the Miami Dolphins. And I think that Martin was 6 years younger than him. And so a lot of this kind of took place in his rookie year or the first 2 years, where Incognito, you could kind of frame it as some sort of hazing or, hey, welcome to the NFL type stuff. That's one way of looking at it. But then some of these things also came out. There was specifically this voicemail that Incognito had left Martin that was super derogatory, like just the N-word and saying something about his mom and all this stuff that goes past just the typical guys talking shit to each other, riffing and stuff.
Yeah.
Granted, we have not heard that voicemail, and that we have just seen the transcription of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that oftentimes is a totally different thing. It's like when you try and transcribe something that a comedian says, if they have, an offensive joke, well, it's going to look horrible on paper because you're not getting the tone, you're not getting the context and stuff. That's not to defend at all the stuff that Incognito said there, but we don't know exactly what their relationship was like. And it's important to note that it was kind of Jonathan Martin's mother who took the term bullying and basically said, okay, my son's getting bullied in the NFL locker room. And then media outlets sort of ran with that. So it kind of makes it totally even worse. It's like, dude, your mom is defending you from bullying in the NFL locker room. And so that kind of really really magnified the whole thing.
Yeah.
But dude, I don't know. It's kind of a delicate situation. There's sort of two ways of looking at it. What do you think? Do you think that Incognito deserved all the flack that he got over the years?
Look, I would 100% agree with you. There are definitely there's no excuse or defense for that transcript that came out. Like if you're reading it, it's like, dude, this is horrible. Like the fact that you're saying this is wild. But at the same time, to your point, there was a lack of context. I think there, but at this, like it's one of those really weird situations because like Richie, we all know those guys in the locker room that kind of take things a little too far, right?
Yeah.
And you know, generally that's why you have a locker room, and it's almost like it's a microcosm of the community at large, and that's why the marketplace of free ideas and being able to speak your mind and saying what you feel or cracking a joke or something like that. The corrective mechanism is the locker room or the community itself. And they're the ones who determine whether or not it's funny or whether or not it's right or wrong. And they're the ones who kind of crack down on that. And teammates would probably be able to do that. This was clearly one of those situations where it was a veteran definitely taking it too far in the hazing realm or, ribbing a rookie, to put it lightly.
Right.
And like it's very hard to defend Richie and him going off the cuff like that. But at the same time, I think the larger discussion is talking about like just the culture of helping to initiate, for lack of a better term, rookies into the NFL. It's part of a team culture. Like becoming one of the guys is something that's very real in any locker room. Otherwise, you're just going to have disbanded individuals who somehow come together and just execute a plan. And there's no like depth to it whatsoever. And there's a connection element to it. Richie clearly approached it the wrong way with this. But in terms of the backlash, I think that's what I was speaking to earlier. I think he was the, not the innocent, necessarily fully innocent scapegoat that the movement that was boiling up took advantage of and kind of put him out there as again.
Yeah,
the
I know what you mean right there. And it's like, yeah, he's not completely innocent at all. And he is clearly one of those guys that's on a football team or a sports team that's just like, all right, dude, shut up. Like, okay, some of the things you said, like,
exactly.
all right, enough, bro. And I love what you said there, dude, about like kind of the marketplace of ideas, because typically in a locker room, I feel like if this were left alone within the locker room and now this stuff kind of got out in the open within the locker room, instead of getting like leaked out through Jonathan Martin's mother and then from her to the media and to the press and them kind of running with it. Imagine if this was just isolated to the locker room and Richie Incognito, granted, maybe he was saying some of this stuff to Martin in private and thought, okay, we're close, we're friends, we've got this, offensive lineman relationship. I can talk shit to him. And maybe this is how he interpreted it. But if he was going too far, you'd think that within the locker room, guys, black guys, white guys of all races would step in, especially if any of this stuff got to this point, like we see in the voicemail there. So love what you said there about the microcosm ideas, the marketplace of ideas. Incognito, since this came out last week, he's basically been firing off on X, dude, just being like, he's pissed off, obviously, that Martin waited 10 years or so to say, no, I never felt bullied. And Incognito is going wild on X. Maybe wild's not the right term. Maybe some of it's justified. But here, for those just listening, we've thrown up a tweet from Richie Incognito. This is us bullying Mike Pouncey for wearing a blanket during our buggy ride to dinner in Indianapolis the night before the game. And it's Incognito and Jonathan Martin kind of laughing at their teammate. And this is kind of the stuff that we're not exactly sure what, because it's okay. Yeah. You call that bullying. Sure. To most of us, any of us that have played sports or been in a locker room, that's just making fun of your bro.
Yeah, absolutely. And this post by Richie right here is definitely tongue in cheek, right? Because it's like, this is probably the lowest level of imagery or example of quote unquote bullying. So he's definitely making that statement again in tongue in cheek. So like going to your point too, it's like every individual obviously has their own limitations and their own obviously feelings and approach and perspective to a situation. And it's clearly Richie, having been a veteran, having been in locker rooms, and having been just exposed to the culture, call it, specifically in their locker room at the time, for quite some time. It's clear that Martin was just entering into it. He may be less immune to some of those psychological hurdles or
Right.
presentations in that moment. And Richie may have just misread the situation, the friendship, the relationship, how strong it was at that time, just due to the fact that he was a rookie, and again, definitely took it too far in certain respects. So like it's yeah, it's hard to point strictly on one person, because at the same time, when you're in the game of football and in the locker room, it is very much a man's game, and sometimes, like, the reason younger guys are getting ribbed or anything like that, it's to help
Right.
harden them for the journey ahead, for the journey of their career ahead, because it's such a violent game. They're like finding those opportunities to bond with your teammates, while going through difficult times together is something that's big. And I think, yeah, it was just a
Yeah.
poor play by Incognito, in those respects, as you
Also,
mentioned, with the
dude,
transcript.
also, Jonathan Martin's been pretty public, pretty open about the fact that he's had mental health struggles as well. He was even like checked into a facility. He once posted this kind of crazy Instagram story. Maybe I'll throw it up here, dude. I'm gonna throw this up just so you could understand this. Um, so
Yeah.
this, for those just listening, it's from Sports Illustrated. Ex-Dolphins
Jeez.
offensive lineman Jonathan Martin reportedly arrested after posting a gun and a photo tagging his former high school in a thread on Instagram, as well as tagging those other guys that were involved on this point, Mike Pouncey and Richie Incognito. So this is a dude also who's had mental health struggles right here. And then this is basically,
Yeah.
this is also a cry for help. And so you have to be cognizant in those social situations, be it in just regular day-to-day life or in the football locker room, of who you are communicating with, dude, because not everyone is going
Yeah.
to interpret this kind of stuff the same way. And some people are going to really take it to heart. Even if the intent from Incognito was, this is just teammate stuff, offensive lineman type stuff, dude. So that's
Yeah.
kind of the big takeaway. I don't know, dude, do you think, because we were in college at this time, or just kind of, you were a year at, I mean, I think I was maybe a sophomore or so. Did you feel any of this kind of stuff? Because I remember back then they were really clamping down on any sort of hazing or anything like that. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a massive conversation going on all campuses, specifically the ones that we went to, Yale and Georgetown, because there were definitely incidents. I think it really stemmed from the
Right.
frat culture, and the hazing that was going on there, and then all of a sudden it just extrapolated out into sports in general. Which, to be frank, there's a vast difference between frat bro hazing and sports team quote
Right.
unquote hazing. That's like a vastly different thing, because being entered into a culture of, call it, brotherhood of partying, drinking, and like God knows what else frats do, you know, and then being initiated into a team that has one goal in mind, that work together to achieve that goal, through and through, go through those difficult times, as I was mentioning before. They're just not
No.
apples to apples. But it was, yeah, it was definitely put a spotlight was put on sports teams specifically, because, again, I think there was an opportunity for this bubbling up movement. And I want to go back to something I was saying earlier about the corrective mechanism of a team and community, and the marketplace of free ideas, and so on and so forth. That's not to say that like every football team is really good at
No.
being able to do that, because we were also experiencing, I think, a couple of years before that, the Saints, you know, the Saints issue and that scandal, and
Right.
Bountygate and all of that kind of stuff. And I think because that was so hot at that time, this was the second opportunity for, call it, the media or that movement to really pounce and sink its teeth into something that was probably a little deeper, or at least hit home to more people in a way that they could capitalize on it, or the movement could capitalize on it, and so on and so forth. And again, this is not to say that all NFL teams were really good at that corrective mechanism aspect of things. Every locker room, like some locker rooms,
Right.
are broken, and I've been a part of some of those. I'm sure you've been a part of some of those. But the majority of the time, guys and teams have their heads screwed on straighter
Right.
than you would think. And this was just one of those teammates running amok
Yeah.
and didn't have the opportunity to be corrected quickly by the
I
team
actually
itself.
don't even know if I've ever been in a non-healthy locker room. I'm thinking back, like I think all of my experiences in the football locker rooms, of high school to prep school to college to out here in the German league, have all been pretty damn healthy and pretty self-correcting. And anytime we have any sort of guy acting up in the wrong way, the spirits of the team manifests in whatever individuals or handful of individuals who kind of self-police that and make sure that the energy is all a healthy way. What did you guys do? Did you get, okay, we had a pretty fun, we weren't allowed to call it this, granted, because this was right at that same time, but we had a freshman hazing week at Georgetown,
Oh,
which was incredibly fun and for the most part incredibly healthy. Did you guys have something like that at Yale?
yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't call it hazing whatsoever, but it was definitely during fall camp. So like all the rookies had to do, obviously the talent show or, something. There were each year was a
Right.
different sort of culture and vibe and like tasks throughout that week. But it was like all in the sense of again camaraderie going through difficult times. Fall camp sucks for so many reasons. And this is just like outlets for people to kind of expend some of that stress or alleviate some of that stress, and it's through like joy
Right.
and camaraderie and all that kind of stuff. And none of it, for the most part, none of it was like taken seriously. It was all part of just
Yeah.
coming together. And yeah, so we had a week very similar
Yeah,
to
dude.
that.
I mean, we had this at Georgetown. And I'm thinking back to it, like, for example, us freshmen had to dress up in our best clothes and go to the university dining hall where all of the upperclassmen on the team were there having dinner, and we had to serve them like waiter and like
Yeah, yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that. Harmless. We had they broke us up into groups, and we had maybe 4 groups of freshmen, and we had a scavenger hunt over the course of the week where you had to get different things. It's like, and there was competition and camaraderie, but it was healthy. And they called it the freshman hazing, but it was nothing like you think in, some sort of 1980s football movie. And I think that that sort of stuff that, okay, maybe some people outside of a football team or a sports team would look at any of that side as, oh, you're making the freshmen dress up and serve the older kids. Like, this is so bad. This is so degrading. What bullying? Um, but if you're on the team, it's all in the spirit of team building. And so I do think it kind of depends on your perspective there.
Yeah, and for the most part, I would say a lot of the commentary that's coming, as you were saying too, right there, just a lot of people who would be
Right.
rallying against that are most of the people who never truly experience what it takes to build relationships and what it takes to build a team and a tight knit
Right.
team at that. These relationships, they don't happen overnight. Just because you sign the dotted line, especially in the pros or anything like that, doesn't mean like you automatically are integrated into the cultural aspect of the team. You now wear the
Okay.
jersey, sure, but like it's building that connective tissue over time and that relationship over time. And like part of the reason that fall camp, as I'm alluding to, is so important is because that's all expedited within that 4 to 8 week period where you're just grinding with your
Right.
guys. And like this is to help build that connective tissue in the same way that like lifting really heavy weights over a course of time will build muscle. It's the exact same thing. It like
Yeah.
small tears in the muscles. Because it's like sometimes it's embarrassing for the guys, but it's just those small tears, and that's what ultimately helps grow a stronger muscle and a stronger
Yeah,
team.
absolutely, dude. And like here's a hilarious example of some of these right here. Tim Tebow. This was pretty famous back in the day. The Friar Monk haircut. Tebow actually pulls that off pretty well. But dude, I'm thinking back,
Yeah.
like here even so we had that in college, and then coming out here to Germany, we had some little stuff. Like, for example, you have to sing on the bus in front of everybody. No matter what your status is on the team, if you're a new guy, you're going up there and you're
Got
doing
to
a
do it.
performance. I crushed it. I picked the secret to that, dude, is to pick a song that everybody will sing along with. But it's even, I watched Joey, my brother, had to go do that at the Eagles. And dude, that was seeing Joey bust out and sing and spin and dance. It's like that's just a
How red did he get?
The Alfieri's, dude, we are known to get red. And then even as a 30-year-old, I had to do for the Italian national team, dude, because I was a rookie on the team, and we had this camp. It's a military base in Italy, and all of the rookies had to perform in a talent show. And that was probably the hardest one, but I got through it. And so it's all well and good in team building, but yeah, man, it's just this is oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say this is there. It's all about perspective, right? And you can look at this as like, oh, guys are jumping on individuals, but there's also an element of this, and it's not defending whatsoever this situation with Richie, Incognito, and Martin, but I'm talking about in general. It's the ability, because every guy who enters into a locker room or on a team, specifically at that level, D1, single A, double A, whatever, and then up to the pros, it's the ability to not humiliate yourself, but to show that you have humility and putting yourself in that position, that vulnerable position amongst the men, because everybody in that locker room was the best on their field in the previous iteration or whatever team they were on. And that's why they're at that level. Right. But now they're beginning from the bottom and having to grow in a new team and a new environment and in a new level. So it's like, it's being able to just shed your pride and ego, dropping that by the wayside. And that's what really allows guys to connect with you, because you show vulnerability even in that moment in time, whether it be a week or a day or a talent show. It's like guys are able to see that you're human and not just some psychopath who thinks your stuff doesn't stink, So it's like that is
a great point. It's basically to break you down is not the right term, but just to bring you guys all together as one. So it is kind of, you break you down and then you build the team back up together. And so there's an element of that, but that was just that. I mean, this is an interesting conversation. A lot of people are kind of taking different sides on, but Richie Incognito, I think, is happy to have seen that come out here, and Martin to say, hey, I never felt like I was getting bullied in this situation. And it kind of, that term took on a life of its own. And so if you want some entertaining tweets, you go look at Richie Incognito's Twitter. Speaking of guys who are, going to the next level, who might have to face some sort of rookie hazing here, Cam Ward, I say the draft is coming up, and Cam Ward came out with this quote right here. And Cam, who's, he's considered probably the top prospect. Most people are saying that he's the number one quarterback. Some say Shador, but here he's saying, okay, you're either going to draft me or you're not. If you don't draft me, that's your fault. You've got to remember you're the same team that's got to play me for the rest of my career, and I'll remember that. Scott, my question to you, dude, how do we feel about this? About a guy who has not yet played in the NFL, coming out publicly with a statement like this? Do you think that this is a level of healthy confidence, or is this a little bit over the top and actually a bad look?
I think it's gotten a little long in the tooth, because so many guys recently have been doing this. It's kind of getting to a point where it's like, okay, man, like, just prove it on the field. You don't need to make a statement. You don't need to say anything. Just let it be part of that interior drive and motivation for yourself. And that's probably more of a personal take on my front. But generally, I would like to internalize this if I were in this situation or had the opportunity like Cam, and we're good enough like Cam to enter in the NFL. It's just like, hey, if people pass on me, it is what it is. I'll make sure that they pay for it later on, and like my play and my determination and drives. Like, I just think this is becoming performative to a certain extent, even though it may be truthful.
Well, the thing with these kind of things is this can either age really, really badly or really well. And so you're actually, by putting this out there, it is a bit of a risk to look like a fool if you end up getting drafted and are not living up to expectations and are falling into the bust category, or if you end up having a career like Patrick Mahomes, like, wow, look at that dude who had that confidence right there. But we, on the show last week or a couple shows ago, we talked about that kind of open letter that Mahomes wrote to NFL teams in 2017 when he was up for the NFL draft. And that had a different sentiment, dude. That was more, the vibe of that was more, hey, I know I'm not perfect, but this is what I'm good at. This is what I'll bring to you if you just give me a chance. And it had humility in it, I think. Like, it still had
Yeah.
confidence, but it had the touch of humility that I think came across really, really well. And that also aged really, really well because of the way that he played in the NFL or has played in the NFL, except
Yeah.
for the Super Bowl 2 weeks ago. That did not great there. But it's also different because we've seen players who have this type of outspoken confidence.
Mhm.
I'm thinking right now of Amon St. Brown, okay,
Yeah.
who he wears number 14 because there were 14 wide receivers drafted ahead of him in his
Mhm.
draft class. He can name all of them, when they were drafted, what school they went to, and he's now very outspoken about that. But the play that he has put on the field in the NFL so far kind of backs that up. So
Yep.
it's kind of my takeaway on these is like, all right, dude, like you can say that, but you got to back it up now, or people are going to be bullying you. Richie Incognito is going to be bullying you in a year if you have a really bad rookie season.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. It's vastly different, and but I think I point my earlier comment saying like, oh, this seems to be getting long in the tooth, and it seems like everybody's kind of doing this. The
Yeah.
difference is like those who are coming out of the woodwork are the ones who have already proven themselves on the field in the NFL and have done it for multiple seasons, not just one.
Yeah.
And so like Amon-Ra St. Brown was definitely top of mind when I was thinking about that. But at the same time, to your point, he's getting it done and is able to point to that, and everybody's like, oh, I get it, and I see how it's driven you to become as great as you are. So yeah, like this just you don't want to show your hand too early, as you're speaking to. It's just like prove it on the field first.
Play devil's advocate because I think both you and I fall on like the same side of that, and we would rather internalize that and prove it on the field. But is there something to be said there that can be looked at as a really positive trait? Like, do you think that some NFL GMs are interpreting that as like, I want that confidence in my quarterback. If we're going to spend the number one pick on this guy, he has to have that attitude. He can't have this, oh, I think I can do it, I'll try my best type attitude. What do you think of that?
Oh no, that's great. I'm laughing so hard because I just watched Detroiters. One of the episodes was about a lawyer who's just like, I'll try, you know, I'll try my best. But
Hey,
anyway,
do or do not. There is no try.
okay,
Yoda.
Yoda.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I think there are some people who are drawn to this and would love to see it in their quarterback and love to see that uber confidence even before they step out on the field, because that's what you need to succeed in the NFL, especially at quarterback, as I've mentioned before. But it's the presentation aspect of things, and sometimes that's the cup of tea for certain GMs or certain coaches, and I would say the majority of them probably would prefer less of that. But at the
Yeah.
same time, like it's to each his own, honestly, at that point.
Well, look at that. That to me, that is more of a wide receiver trait right there. What Cam Ward
Mhm.
is just busting out with this go. Because let's look at the quarterbacks that we kind of consider to be the top tier or top two tiers in the NFL. Okay, you've got Mahomes, Lamar, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. These guys are not really throwing quotes out there like that. I
Mm.
mean, it's for the most part they're letting their play speak. Throwing Jalen Hurts on in there now that he's won a Super Bowl, that
Yeah.
dude doesn't say anything. Like he is a silent assassin, which I actually really, really love. So that's the thing that kind of worries me is if like, hey, you're acting a little bit like a wide receiver, Cam. I kind of want you to act a little bit more like a quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah. And what would be great? I think you mentioned this in the last episode, is especially when we're talking about Mahomes.
Yep.
It's weird that this came out because you were like, oh yeah, this gives me some hope for like guys like a Cam Ward who, if I remember correctly, he was a no star or 1-star quarterback coming out of
True,
high
yeah,
school,
that's
everything like
true.
that. So it's just like, oh man, you're this close to like being that dude and being the next generation's guy, right?
Right.
So don't play your hand too early, or don't show your hand too early. So I just in terms of the quarterback, it's so interesting because you have to have like a bravado that's unmatched, but it's the way in which again you present that to the world, and it's
Right.
almost more intense and more engaging for
Dude,
audiences and fans and everything if you're silent, like the silent killer.
actions speak louder than words, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
just what I said. Look at those quarterbacks. Look at the quarterback that just won the Super Bowl. He is the prime example of that. You can't get a damn quote out of him. It's just he gives you no bulletin board material like that. I mean,
he's like Luke Musgrave when you're interviewing him. One word answers.
One word answer. Next question. I'm trying to think before we move on. Are there any prominent quarterbacks right now in the NFL that have that personality? Like the last one I think of is Cam Newton. But anybody that's active right now that has sort of that wide receiver chirping type attitude.
In the top 10?
Any of them. Any starting quarterback.
I would say maybe Baker.
I was just thinking that Baker's the one. One.
Yeah. So and I think he's finally gotten over the hump of being able to okay, right. I get it. Like that bravado, that confidence, like it's coming out on the field and he's been able to right the ship. But 99 out of 100 times, guys aren't able to do that. And that's why Baker's something different. And I'm really interested to see how he does in the next few years. But yeah, I would say he's probably the one guy that I would point to in the NFL right now that has that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But also look at some of he had struggles early on and he was, he was criticized for being in all these commercials and being all about the media and, still we're not winning. And so you can put yourself in a tough situation like that. All right. Well, let's stay in the backfield, moving from quarterback to running back. Okay.
Yeah.
Defense does not get enough love, dude. I don't know. I should do a defensive segment. Ashton Jeanty was on Jon Gruden's podcast. I've got a 1-minute clip here because, dude, have you seen how Jeanty stands in the backfield?
Yeah.
Michael Myers, straight up and down, no ready position at all. And Jon Gruden questioned him about that. Let's watch this 1-minute clip here.
You have the most unique stance I have ever seen. Now, you got to come clean with me. Why are you so standing like straight up? Jahmyr Gibbs does that. Are you watching Gibbs or is that just you? Are you trying to see more? What is your straight up stance? I've never seen it.
Yeah, I mean it's nothing.
Let me see it. Stand up. Show me that stance. Show these people. This is how you stand.
Right here.
So that has never happened in the history of football, man. Now, what are you going to do when you come to the NFL and somebody like Gruden says, "Nah, man, let's get lower." What is this?
I'm going to do the same thing because I rushed for 2,600 yards. So, if it was a problem,
are you just doing it for vision? Are you trying to see pre-snap maybe a little bit more?
No, I think obviously I'm trying to scan the defense, and I feel like either way you can scan the defense, but I think the most important thing is being relaxed, like before the ball snaps. I know football is a violent game, but a lot happens in those few seconds of scanning the defense, right? You got to, see what the linebackers are doing.
You're killing me, man. A coach now, all the running backs are doing what you're doing. You know that, don't you? You set a trend.
Yeah, I did. It's been amazing to see.
It's amazing to see. So we don't have our resident running back on the show with us today, Mikey, who would probably come to a violent defense of this position that Jeanty is with here right now. What are your thoughts on this? Does it matter? Is it a trivial thing that doesn't even matter, or just where do you land on this? Because this is just opposite of what you're taught in football growing up.
Yeah, I would say it's becoming less and less of a important factor. I would say in the new game of football. So like you look at even quarterbacking and how that has changed dramatically in terms of arm location and release point, and like that still matters to a certain degree. But you have Lamar, you have Mahomes just absolutely destroying that. Josh Allen as well, just destroying that previous notion and that approach. And like, that's always good for foundational purposes and building upon that and then experimenting. But like in the running back position, like you got to do what's going to give you an advantage. And I feel like Jeanty, he's a smaller statured dude. He's clearly found a formula to help him succeed. So I love the fact that he just like pointed to the numbers. It's just like, dude, this is great success. Why change what has done that for me to this point? And like, who knows, maybe that does change when he enters into the League of Men in the NFL. But at this point in time, it's like, no, I'm not going to change until something forces me to.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I was looking at something. I can't remember exactly what the data was, but it was looking, I think, at the running backs from the last 15 years entering into the draft. And he was one of the top 3 graded running backs. I can't remember who. Christian was in there as well. I can't remember remember who the other one was. Oh, it was Saquon. It was Saquon, Christian, and Ashton Jeanty. So, I mean, he's in great company right there, at least in where he projects. I'm hearing people, tell me what you think of this. I'm hearing people talk about the Cowboys should select Jeanty. I think they have the number 12 pick.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? You think that'd be a good fit?
Yeah, I think the Cowboys have been missing a running back piece for a couple of years now. I know they moved off of Zeke, and then I'm blanking on the guy that filled his position after that, but it just hasn't panned out. And I feel like the running game is a massive soft point for the offense, the Cowboys offense. And honestly, it would help Dak greatly to at least have a threat back there. And make defenses pause and think before they react and scheme. So it makes sense from an offensive standpoint for the Cowboys to get some help back there.
Yeah. So we'll see. And we know now on this show, I will never criticize Jerry Jones again. I am pro Jerry because he's pro family. And so anybody who criticizes Jerry hates families. Yeah. So whatever you do, Jerry, it's gonna be a good decision. We gotta, all right, dude. I know you saw this. The hockey fights coming out of the Four Nations face-off. I was getting gassed up watching some of these edits here. So for those who don't know, this is put on by the NHL. It's called the Four Nation Face-Off. Who is it? It's Sweden and Finland, Canada, and the United States. And this is sort of to replace the NHL All-Star Game. Just so happens that this happened at the same time as the NBA All-Star Game. And when we're looking at kind of the two products that these leagues puts on the ice and the court in this last week, hockey has blown basketball out of the water. Let me throw this up right here. So this is a tweet right here that says, I'm the biggest NBA fan on the planet, but the difference in buzz, vibe, and intensity between NBA's All-Star Weekend and the NHL's Four Nations is astronomical. Pains me to say it, but it's not even close. Four Nations is absolutely brilliant. The NBA effort this weekend, again, not as much. Scott, how do you feel about this? Did you watch any of the NBA All-Star Game, any of those passing drills or any of that? Where do you land on this hockey basketball stuff, which we talked about a few weeks ago, dude, that hockey is on the trajectory to eclipse basketball in America someday. Where you at here?
Oh, dude, this tweet nails it. Like I couldn't have said it any better myself. It's just I would even say NFL is in that realm, and the MLB. It's just hockey has figured out the right formula for this competition, this mid-season break. And it's not really even a break for the guys. It's just like a different scenario, a different environment, a different team, just getting them out of their comfort zone. It's just basketball. There are some constraints, obviously, with the game, right? I don't think basketball has really as many constraints as, say, football or hockey. So the fact that they have devolved into this is sad. It's honestly sad to see. But I love the fact that the NHL is like, no, dude, the product that we have is the best thing we can put forth. And let's just change it up a little bit. Let's gin up some, call it just healthy competition and put them in their native teams and then see what happens.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I think this also just comes down to is let's have some passion, energy, and stakes in the products that we're putting on the field. In the stakes with the Four Nations face-off, just because of the political situation between the United States and Canada and the tariffs. I mean, this happened. For those who didn't see, these hockey fights happened. 3 of them in the first 9 seconds of play after Canada booed the national anthem of the United States. Which, hey, you are totally all right. You're allowed to do that. But also then the players on the United States are going to react. And these Tkachuk brothers, they went after Canada right here, dude. I mean,
drop the gloves, baby.
It's so sick how they just right after they do just throw the gloves off right there so casually and then just go after them. And these guys said that they had also kind of coordinated this. They were like kind of planning this, and it's like, hey man, this gassed a lot of people up, and there were some of these edits floating around. I don't know. Should we throw one of these edits on? Nah, we'll get copyrighted.
Yeah.
with Fortunate Son playing and a bunch of American clips. It was a hyped up weekend, and they are playing tomorrow, dude, for the championship, Canada and the USA. So it's like a round robin type tournament, and they're playing tomorrow.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what comes out of that, especially if this was the first matchup. The thing here is like, yes, there's a lot of the political conversation going around, and that probably fueled some of the fans' energy and everything like that. But I think aside from the fans, which is awesome, and feeling that energy, I think the team, I don't think they were viewing the rivalry or the competition from that lens or from that perspective. I think there's a genuine surge, and like, this is Canada's sport, right? And the US is here, and this young group of dudes is ready to take that from them. And I think that's what was so cool about this, is because you saw some fight in the dogs that are the US hockey team. Right. And like, that's what everybody wants to see. And it's not like they're probably chirping at each other, not even talking about politics or anything like that, but they were just chirping at each other from competitive standpoint and being like, no, we're coming to take this from you. Like, this is ours now. This is, I'm the captain now.
I'm the captain now. Yeah, dude, that is so sick. And that's what I love about international competition. That's what I love about the Olympics or anything where we are getting to put your country's name on your chest and then play your sport. Because you say it all the time, dude. Sports, it gives us this outlet of a very healthy tribalism where you can root for your country and you can identify with your nation and the sports team there, and you can go to battle. Okay. Yeah. It's not, no one's dying. It's not a war, but it still fulfills that kind of desire with human beings to have some of that. And that's such a great example of this. Dude, these hockey guys are such badasses. I mean, can you imagine also just knowing right before the fight, all right, I'm about to get in a fist fight on ice skates?
Yeah. Yeah. On ice skates. Yeah. Zero planting capability and everything. Like, hockey dudes are built different. And I know there's the conversation about who's tougher, football players or hockey dudes. And honestly, even being a football dude, the fact that they're able to do this and, drop the gloves and go into this fully knowing that they could get like sliced by a skate or just, mauled is ballsy, man. It's ballsy. So I love seeing this, and hopefully, football takes notes, because I think they've gone a little Mickey Mouse in their Pro Bowl selection and their All-Star, call it All-Star week, with the Pro Bowl and everything like that. So they got to figure out the right approach. And I think this is something very, very interesting that the NHL is doing. And granted, it's specific to the sport, right? Because it is so international, but I think the NFL can do better and should do better. And obviously I'm not providing any solution right now because I don't have one off the top of my head, but there is one out there that we just haven't found.
Right. Lastly here, just before we move on, we have to give props here, because you're just saying hockey guys are tough as hell, and there is a debate here. Let's just enjoy this beautiful check. All right. Here we go. Real quick.
Tkachuk. And now Doughty, he got slammed into the wall by Brady Tkachuk.
Okay.
Tkachuk. And now
that is sport right there. All right. And that's their All-Star game weekends. And I respect the hell out of that. And we are rooting for the USA tomorrow against Canada. See what happens. All right, dude. Yeah. We've been ragging a little bit on the NBA All-Star weekend because of their passing drills and lack of energy or anything. The one cool thing from the NBA All-Star weekend, in my opinion, it was the dunk contest. And Mac McClung getting called up, dude, as he does every year, to come and put on in the dunk contest. Hold on, let me throw this up. Okay. This dude is from West Virginia, and
Mountain Mama.
Dude, beautiful right there. And I think it's the third year in a row that he has won the dunk contest. But this is like also another thing. You know what kind of sucks? Like, this is awesome. Great dunks. Incredible. It used to be when we were growing up, the guys competing in the dunk contest were some of the biggest names in the NBA. You know, you would have like the superstar all-star guy, Vince Carter. It's like he wasn't only just a great dunker, he was also an NBA all-star. And so we've been talking about the diminishing competitiveness in the NBA. It's like we want these superstars to compete in this competition, and that's kind of sad to see that it's not those guys competing in this event anymore.
Yeah, it's a massive problem, honestly, because we all know that there are some guys out there who should have done the dunk contest because of their just sheer athletic capabilities and gifts that they have. Like, hey, LeBron, we're all looking at you. It's like the fact that you haven't done that once in your career, it's kind of Mickey Mouse. It's like, yeah, you could get injured, but like you dunk in practice all the time. Like, just do it another 4 or 5 times in this, and we're good. Like, it's I hate this load management or approach. Like, any risk is too much risk. It's that same approach that's seeped into culture and society. It's like that's not what furthers our love or fandom or even just the expanse of the sport and what it could be and fandom at large. So like, it's just any risk is too risk is just such a low level reason not to do something.
You gotta have a little risk in life, dude. Last thing, I remember we don't even have to get into it, but just because you said that, I saw a tweet the other day. I think I saved it. That said, and this is very controversial, so we might not have time to get into all of it. LeBron James is actually responsible for the downfall of the NBA, which is a hot take, but their argumentation was that he was one of the primary guys to really popularize load management. And one could argue that load management has become one of the biggest problems in the NBA. Hot take from a guy that's been the face of the league for 20 years that you could be accused of actually ruining the league. Where do you stand on that?
There may be some credence there, but I think there are far more egregious offenders like a Joel Embiid or I mean, even Kawhi is in that bubble. Maybe LeBron was one of the first to kind of at least introduce it to the league and everything. But I think some people have taken it to a degree that's way too far. So there's some credence there, I believe. And I think one of the reasons why a lot of people are so frustrated with load management is because you even see load management in the middle of plays. Like most guys take plays off. Defense, offensively, they're just kind of standing around doing all that kind of stuff and just like whatever, I'll come back in the next fast break or something like that. And it's seeping into play, even not just those who are on the court. It's how they approach the actual game itself is lessening. And it's like that's an infusion of soccer in my estimation. It's like I understand soccer players, like if you're 40 meters from the ball, like you're not going to necessarily affect what's going on at the placement of the ball. But at the same time, it's like that's becoming too much the same with NBA on a smaller court with bigger dudes and all that kind of stuff. That's supposed to be fast, pounding, and like incredibly exciting. And that's why people fell in love with it, especially in the 2000s eras and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like there's an infusion of that sort of approach, even in gameplay. That's really irking people.
Look at you using meters instead of yards. Very European of you, Scott.
Out there on the pitch.
Out there, yeah, you do say pitch, and now you said meters. That's 2 strikes. One more, and you're out. All right, dude. Good stuff. Yeah. Have fun in Florida today.
Oh, so much fun. So many meetings.
So fun. Meetings are so sick. All right, there we have it. Everybody, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Peace.